Hello everyone, and welcome. Today, I want to share a story. Not just any story, but one that holds a message for each of us. It's a tale, wrapped in fiction, but rooted in truth. A journey of falling down, getting back up, and discovering that sometimes what we think is the end is actually a new beginning. Let me tell you the story of Elias, a simple man who walked through fire and came out whole.
My name is Elias, and I used to believe I was invisible. I was born in a small village tucked between mountains and rivers, a place where the sun rose slowly and life moved even slower. In our village, everyone had a role. Some were farmers who woke before dawn to tend the fields, their hands calloused from years of work. Some were builders, shaping wood and stone into homes and fences. Some were singers or storytellers, weaving the village's history into songs and tales that made the nights brighter. But me? I was none of those things. I was the quiet boy who fixed things. Shoes with torn soles, windows cracked by storms, carts with broken wheels. If it needed mending, it ended up in my hands. People appreciated my work, said I had a steady touch, but no one ever truly saw me. I blended into the background like a shadow that served a purpose but was never the focus. It was as if I was part of the furniture, useful but forgettable. For a long time, that didn't bother me. I told myself, this is enough. This is who I am. I convinced myself that living quietly, without making waves, was safe. But deep inside, there was a whisper, soft, persistent, almost like a secret song only I could hear. It would visit me late at night, after everyone else had fallen asleep, when the village was wrapped in silence. A whisper that said, "You were made for more." I tried to ignore it because listening to that voice meant risking everything I had come to know. It meant stepping out of the shadows into a world of uncertainty and possible failure. Fear, that heavy, cold chain, held me back. I clung to what was comfortable, even if it made me feel invisible. Then came the storm. And I don't just mean a storm in the sky. It was like the earth itself had turned against us. The wind roared like a wild beast, ripping roofs off homes and bending trees until they snapped. The river swelled beyond its banks, flooding fields and washing away the crops we had worked so hard to grow. Our village, my home, was shattered in a night. In the days that followed, despair settled like a thick fog. Food ran low. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was heavy and suffocating. People began to leave. One by one, families packed their few belongings and walked away, chasing the hope of something better beyond the mountains. I stayed. Weeks passed. I watched empty houses gather dust. The once vibrant village became a ghost town. And then one morning, I stood in the center of the square and realized I was alone. No people, no sounds, just the wind and my own heartbeat. I stood there, heart pounding, surrounded by silence that felt heavier than any storm. Why am I still here? I asked myself. Why haven't I left like everyone else? Fear whispered its answer. Because you're afraid. And it was true. Afraid of the unknown. Afraid of failing somewhere else. Afraid of being nothing. But then, another voice, quieter but stronger, rose from deep inside. You were made for more. You cannot turn away now. The words echoed in my mind, filling the emptiness around me. I felt anger. Anger at myself for hiding, for settling, for believing I was invisible. And beneath that anger, a flicker of hope, fragile but real. I realized I had a choice: stay in the shadows or step into the light of uncertainty. For the first time, I felt the weight of that choice. and the possibility that I might actually be able to change my story. It was in that silence that something changed. Because in that empty space, I found something unexpected. Space to think, space to feel, space to finally listen to the whisper again. You were made for more. I looked around at the broken roofs, the shattered walls, the silent streets. Yes, the village was wounded, but it was still standing. It wasn't beyond repair. And in that moment, I made a choice. Not because anyone told me to, not because I thought I could succeed, but because it mattered, because I needed to try. I would rebuild the village, piece by piece. The first days were brutal. My hands cracked and bled. I stumbled over tasks I had never tried, mixing mortar, planting seeds, fixing wells. Failure became my companion. I broke things more than I fixed them. But with every mistake, I learned. With every repaired roof, I felt a spark of hope. I wasn't just rebuilding walls, I was rebuilding myself. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, others began to return. At first, it was one family. They saw the signs of life. A garden sprouting in a cracked yard, smoke rising from a chimney. Then, another and another. They came back not just because of me, but because the village was breathing again. Because hope is contagious. People picked up the pieces alongside me. One fixed the schoolhouse. Another cleared the road. Children's laughter echoed in the fields once more. Life seeped back into the village, fragile but alive. One day, someone said to me, "Elias, you saved this village." I shook my head, and with a quiet smile I said, "No. I didn't save it, I saved myself. Because in choosing to rebuild something outside of me, I ended up rebuilding everything inside me. I stopped being invisible, not because others finally saw me, but because I learned to see myself. I showed up, I believed, I fought, I built. And in that becoming, I discovered who I truly was. What I've learned on this journey is simple. You don't have to be the loudest voice to make a difference. You don't have to be the fastest runner or the strongest warrior. You only need to show up. You only need to care enough to try, over and over again. The world may tell you to chase fame, wealth, or grand victories. But true greatness? Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it looks like staying behind to rebuild when everyone else has left. Sometimes it's following that whisper inside, even when it scares you. You will be doubted, you will be tired, you will fail. But those moments aren't the end. They are the fire that forges you. So, if you ever feel small, forgotten, or lost in the shadows, remember Elias, remember the village, remember that light doesn't always burst like a firework. Sometimes, it grows slowly, steady, and strong, from one brave step to the next.
Thank you so much for listening to Elias's story. Even though he is a fictional character, the journey he walked is one that many of us experience in different ways. The feeling of being invisible, alone, and facing seemingly impossible odds. What I want you to take away from this is that your story matters, no matter where you are right now. You might be in a place where everything feels broken or uncertain. You might feel like giving up because the path seems too hard, or because no one seems to see your efforts. But just like Elias, you have more strength inside than you realize. Sometimes the world around us feels like it's falling apart, but that doesn't mean we are broken beyond repair. It means there's an opportunity, an invitation to rebuild. And that rebuilding doesn't need to be loud or grand. It can be quiet, small steps every day. I want you to remember that showing up for yourself, even in the hardest moments, is a victory. Choosing to keep going when everything says stop is the kind of bravery that changes lives, not just yours, but the lives of everyone around you. If this story touched something inside you, a flicker of hope, a spark of courage, please hold on to it. Let it remind you that you're not invisible, you're not forgotten. You are capable of incredible things, even if it doesn't feel like it today. And if you're ready, I invite you to take that first step. Maybe it's as simple as standing up a little straighter, making a small decision that moves you forward, or believing that the future holds more than the past. Thank you for being here, for being willing to listen, and for being brave enough to face your own journey. If this message spoke to you, please like this video and subscribe, not just to support me, but as a promise to yourself. A promise that no matter what storms come your way, you will keep building, keep rising, and keep becoming. Remember, your greatest chapter is still ahead.